and welcome to Group 1's presentation on college football beyond the scoreboard. Our group consisted of Daniel Amatuli, Patrick Burke, myself, Christopher Goodman, and Benjamin Harris, and our data source, the college football dataset, was identified on Kaggle and is approximately 2 years old. That is one challenge that we face with this data is its age, as NCAA conferences have seen a number of shifts in the past several years. So while this data is the most recent available, it also has some old conferences listed for a handful of schools, such as the University of Cincinnati and Pittsburgh University. Age aside, however, this dataset was very robust and complete and houses many metrics that we were able to use in order to enable countless visualizations to build our story around college football. Now, as to the question of why this topic, with football season quickly approaching, our project addresses the subjective question around the quote-unquote best college football programs. Teams can't necessarily be compared solely based on wins and losses, so this dashboard takes into account both fan and financial return on investment to understand how programs are using their resources effectively or ineffectively, as well as where fans can really get their money's worth. Now, this dashboard contains a couple of visualizations, including a map of universities colored by their conference, with an interactive drop-down that impacts the size of their representative circles. The dashboard also contains a scatter plot, which is customizable with 2 parameters at a time in order to visualize side-by-side some potentially correlated variables. A bar chart is also provided within the dashboard, and this enables us to visualize financials by conference with an interactive drop-down including revenue, expenses, profit, etc. Now, based on the very customizable fashion of our data set, the findings are quite numerous, since really the impact and focus of our dashboard is at the user's hands. There's so many different routes to follow depending on user need and interest. And so based on all of this, we are able to narrow down into a couple of specific examples that we want to highlight. Now, as a prerequisite to our findings, we did create 2 new calculations, including football ROI and fan ROI, to encompass a couple of variables into one metric dealing with return on investment from either perspective. Now, for a couple of examples of observations that we were able to make based on our data and with our dashboard, we wanted to highlight kind of the difference in the scope of how many questions can be answered. This includes how fan experience, ticket prices, team performance, and financial investment can all kind of come together or separately tell the story of successful programs at a college level. As an example, we can narrow into SEC schools, potential powerhouse of college football programs, and understand which program is the most profitable and which is the most successful. And we can also look at top programs like Georgia and see where they derive success compared to all of the other college programs that we have access to. Now, that being said, let's hop into our visualization, our dashboard. So as we can see here, here's the university map that I mentioned, the customizable scatter plot to uncover potential correlations, and the university financials bar chart here. So as an example, we mentioned fan experience and how that tells the story of successful programs. So we can start by looking at average ticket price, as that's what a fan experiences firsthand, and see how that correlates with total win or total profit. So we can see there's a huge clump of data down here, and as ticket prices increase, we see some more potentially prestigious universities like Michigan who can charge higher amounts for their tickets, and their fans will still show up. We can also see highly successful programs such as Georgia at the high profit but low ticket price. Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, some of those more southern schools, and they can sell tickets for less and still have huge profit values. Now, we also asked about team performance. So if we want to switch this visual to win rate versus total profit, for example, this looks at team performance and how that plays with successful in terms of profit. So with that being said, we can see again, as we can see this positive correlation here that with more wins, profit increases, and we again see Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, schools like that rising to the top as they have both high win rate and high profits. We also asked about financial investment, so as a proxy for that variable, let's look at stadium size. If a school is willing to spend money on a 100,000 seat stadium, we can tell that the school is investing a lot in the program. And as we correlate that or plot that along with total profit, we can once again see that positive relationship where schools like Texas, Oklahoma, Michigan all stand out once again. We can see Georgia here as well, although it was missing its label in this example. Georgia continues to rise to the top of these hypothetical situations or of these visualizations. So as another example, we talked about Georgia and where it's able to derive its success compared to other schools or even to SEC schools as we look at them by conference over here. If we focus in on SEC schools and we can change our size of bubbles by total profit, we see Georgia is the biggest within the SEC. There's some other ones such as Auburn and Alabama who also have high profit values. Let's look at the win rate versus profit per undergraduate student. We can see that Georgia again is towards the top with Alabama, and when we look at the SEC financials, if we switch between total profit, football profit, Georgia is by far leading the pack there. And if we jump to basketball profit, for example, a different sport, Georgia's no longer at the top of this list. In fact, they're actually at the bottom of the SEC performance. But as we look back to win rate, Georgia wins a lot of their games, most of their games, and loses maybe one or two a season. And this makes an impact on profit values. So if we switch this to win rate and total profit, winning makes a huge difference, especially in the SEC. There's schools like Mississippi State who aren't winning as many games, especially within their conference, and they aren't making as much money as Georgia or Alabama. So with all of that being said, if we flip back to our slides, there's some key takeaways to highlight. That being, programs like Georgia provide strong value in both satisfaction and financial ROI to the institution. There's some schools that have high expenses but low financial return, which would raise questions about efficient spending and whether they're paying too much to NIL deals or too high of a coach's salary for not winning enough games. Some schools, such as Texas and Oklahoma, have high profit and high return, showing that big spending pays off if you manage it appropriately and have appropriate talent to win games. Fan ROI has a sharp drop-off when ticket prices increase, meaning charging $100 per ticket, it doesn't make as much of a difference as charging $30 per ticket and winning games. And there's a couple of outlier universities that are worth calling out because those do stand out in our dashboard as low-spending programs that lose money, but also stand out as relatively efficient performers and winning games. As for final recommendations, we would recommend that athletic departments use this dashboard to compare themselves against their direct competitors, their within conference rivals or out of conference comparisons to see how their spending aligns with both performance and fan value. Programs with low football ROI or fan ROI may benefit from cost restructuring or pricing adjustments, and high-value programs can justify their high spending and potentially ask for more, but they must also maintain high performance in order to keep fans satisfied and ROI up. I want to say thank you from Group 1 on behalf of Daniel, Patrick, Christopher, Ben, and myself. Thank you for listening to our presentation.